Today, we're diving into the life and work of the Romantic poet John Keats. He's a man who gave the world some of its most beautiful, most famous lines of poetry, all while his own life was basically falling apart at the seams.
So that brings us to the big question, the central mystery of John Keats. It's this incredible paradox, isn't it? How does a life filled with so much personal suffering, so much pain, lead to the creation of something so profoundly beautiful and timeless? That's the question we're really going to try to answer today.
And when we say tragedy, believe me, we mean it. Just look at this timeline. By 8 years old, his father dies in an accident. At 14, his mother dies of tuberculosis. Then he has to watch his beloved brother Tom die from that exact same disease. And then, just 2 years later, it claims his own life. He was only 25. His entire existence was just framed by loss.
So, to even begin to understand his poetry, we have to start with the world that made him. A world of, well, constant hardship and struggle.
You know, what's incredible to think about is his dedication. Keats was actually training to be a surgeon. A stable, pretty secure career, right? But his passion for poetry was so intense, so overwhelming, that he just walked away from it all. He chose art over security, knowing he'd face poverty, illness, and critics who were, frankly, brutal. That kind of commitment is what makes him such a quintessential romantic figure.
So how did all this pain actually translate into his poems? Well, his first response wasn't to sit and analyze his suffering. No, it was to build an alternative reality, a world so beautiful, so vivid, that it could just completely overwhelm your senses.
Keats really believed that poetry's #1 job was to delight you, to be an almost physical experience. And to do that, he used his main toolkit, the 5 senses. He didn't just tell you about a place, he made you feel it, taste it, smell it.
Let's take smell, for instance. He'd use the fragrance of incense or the scent of, quote, fast-fading violets to pull you right into the scene. You'd get this powerful sense of place and emotion before your brain even had a chance to process the words.
And then, of course, there was taste. His poems are filled with these incredibly rich descriptions of food and drink, everything from spiced wines to jellies soother than the creamy curd. This wasn't just fancy decoration, it was his way of making these imagined worlds feel real, decadent, and just intensely present.
And of course, touch. When you read his work, you can almost feel the warmth of a fire on your skin or the softness of velvet. By completely immersing you in these physical sensations, he made his poetic world a much more compelling place to be than the real one.
This is such a brilliant example of his technique. In just these 2 lines from his poem To Autumn, you can almost feel the heaviness of the fruit, you can see that gourd swelling, you can taste the ripeness. It's just a total explosion of sensory detail.
But look, this sensory overload wasn't just for show. It was all part of a much deeper philosophy. So now we need to move from how he wrote to why he wrote the way he did. This is the crucial part.
And here it is. This is the line, his most famous one, from Ode on a Grecian Urn. This single idea, this was the anchor that gave his chaotic, tragic life some kind of meaning. For Keats, this was not just some pretty phrase, it was his mission statement.
So what did he actually mean by that? Well, he wasn't talking about superficial prettiness. Not at all. For Keats, beauty was like catching a glimpse of a deeper, eternal truth. Think about it. In a world full of sickness and death, the experience of a beautiful moment, whether in art or in nature, that was something real, something permanent. It was a kind of spiritual harmony that logic and reason just couldn't touch.
And we can see this philosophy playing out perfectly in his most celebrated works, the Great Odes, which he somehow wrote in this single, unbelievable burst of creative genius.
Each one of these odes is like a perfect little case study. In Ode to a Nightingale, the bird song becomes a symbol for immortal art, a way to escape human suffering. In Ode on a Grecian Urn, he's in awe of how art can freeze a perfect moment of joy forever, basically defeating time. And then finally, in To Autumn, he finds this calm, accepting beauty in the natural cycle of life, of ripeness, and eventually of decay.
Okay, so we've got his tragic life, his sensory poetry, his philosophy of beauty. But there is one last piece to this puzzle. It's an intellectual concept that really, truly unlocked his genius.
He actually gave it a name, negative capability. This was Keats's big contribution to romantic thinking. It's the ability of a great mind to be comfortable with not knowing, to live with mystery and doubt,
without this desperate need to find a logical, rational explanation for everything.
Let's just put that in simpler terms. Think of it as a superpower, the power of being okay with not having all the answers. While everyone else was trying to solve life's biggest questions, Keats believed the poet's real job was to experience those questions in all their messy complexity, to embrace the paradox of joy and pain, life and death, and to find the beauty that exists right there in the middle of that mystery.
So when we put all these pieces together, his life, his style, his philosophy, we start to see his truly unique place in literary history.
This little comparison really nails down what made Keats so different. His contemporary, Wordsworth, he looked at nature and saw a moral teacher. Shelley used nature as a symbol for political revolution. But Keats, he was doing something else entirely. He celebrated nature and art simply for their own sake, for their pure sensory beauty. And that singular focus is exactly why he's so often called the purest of the Romantic poets.
Which brings us all the way back to our first question. How did he do it? Well, the answer is, Keats didn't run away from his suffering. He dove right into it. And by going through it, he found something he believed was more real and more permanent than pain, the profound spiritual truth of beauty.
And so, we end right where we began, with that iconic line. But now, it's not just a quote, is it? It's the sum of his life's work. It's his answer to mortality, and it's his incredible gift to all of us.
And that really leaves us with a question for our own time. In a world that is absolutely full of its own uncertainties, its own mysteries, and its own doubts, what beauty do we choose to hold on to as our truth?